For the past 4 years, the CTA has been undertaking a major improvement project along one of its busiest corridors, the North Side Main Line, which carries the city's busiest line, the Red Line, as well as Purple Line Express service and the also very heavily used Brown Line. Having been constructed more than 100 years ago, the 4-track line was aging severely and bottlenecks were forming as the outdated infrastructure struggled to handle some of the CTA's most intense services. Some sections of the line required major improvements to allow for a higher throughput of trains, while other parts of the line were simply old and crumbling, necessitating their complete replacement. If you want to learn more about the complex logistics of making these kinds of improvements, while also maintaining almost all normal service on these lines, be sure to check out my video from a few years back that I made around the halfway point of the project. As of July 20th, 2025, the first phase of the Red-Purple Modernization Project is now complete. Work on this phase consisted of 2 distinct projects: work at and around Clark Street Junction, and the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr Modernization Project. Since the latter of these 2 was the focus of my previous video on the topic, today's video will include a brief overview of the Clark Junction project and adjacent work, as well as an update on how that project looks in its completion. After that, we'll take a look at the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr corridor and explore the brand new stations that have opened, as well as discuss some of the service modifications which have been in place for more than 4 years now, which many passengers have grown used to, but are now back to their original service patterns. Let's start by discussing the work that was done at Clark Junction and just to the north of it. There were 2 distinct issues at this location that the CTA was seeking to resolve. Firstly, Clark Junction is a major transition point in the line. South of the junction, Brown and Purple Line trains operate local service into the loop using the outer tracks on the 4-track line, while Red Line trains operate express service on the inner tracks, making limited stops until they enter the State Street subway, which runs under downtown. At Clark Street, however, the Brown Line branches off onto its own line running west to Albany Park, while the Red and Purple lines continue northward. While the Purple Line does remain on the outer tracks here, these now become the express lines, with only 1 stop before reaching the city limits at Howard Street. The Red Line, in the meantime, operates local service on the inner tracks here. Because the Brown Line uses the outer tracks, when northbound trains split off onto the branch line, they have to switch onto the inner track and then cross over the 2 westernmost tracks, effectively blocking the entire 4-track line for the duration of the diverging maneuver. With these lines being so busy, this situation was obviously problematic. Not only does having the line blocked this frequently limit the total number of Red and Purple Line trains the CTA can run, it also means that if a Red Line train were to arrive at Belmont Station, which is just south of the junction, shortly before a Brown Line train does, the train's not able to wait at the platform in order to be able to pick up any passengers who are wishing to transfer from that Brown Line train, because if it stays at the station, it will then get stuck waiting behind that Brown Line to cross over the tracks. This can make transferring between these 2 lines at Belmont rather frustrating. Further adding to this problem, the tracks just to the north of the junction were sharply curved to avoid buildings, which were in the way at the time of the line's construction in 1900. This slowed trains down even further. Beginning in 2019, the CTA launched the first phase of the Red-Purple Modernization Project with the construction of a new flyover which would carry Brown Line trains up and over the Red and Purple Line. For a period of time, this required the closure of Track 4, the northbound brown and purple line track, north of Barry Avenue, meaning that all northbound trains shared one track through Belmont Avenue Station, just to the south of the junction. In late 2021, the new bypass opened for service. Subsequently, Track 4 reopened, but for Brown Line trains only, as temporarily it only connected to the new bypass. Brown Line trains resumed using their old platform at Belmont Station. Not only did northbound Purple Line trains remain on the Red Line platform, but southbound Purple Line trains were also shifted over to the southbound Red Line platform. A temporary curve of track was installed to connect Track 1 with the Brown Line, and in early 2022, the main line to the north of Belmont Station was temporarily reduced to only 2 tracks, as the CTA began work on straightening out the line to the north, following both demolition and, in some cases, relocation of some of the buildings in the area. Red and Purple Line trains would share tracks to the north of Belmont Station, which they were already doing further up the line for the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr Modernization Project. In late 2023, reconstruction was completed on the southbound tracks north of Clark Junction, and in 2025, the northbound tracks finally opened for service, and trains resumed their normal operating patterns through Belmont Station and Clark Junction. With the flyover and reconstructed tracks now open for service, travel through and around Clark Junction is now significantly improved. Continuing up the Red Line from Belmont, we enter the section of the line that was completely reconstructed during the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr Modernization Project. Let's take a look at each station along the line.
Doors open on the left as transfer to Red Line trains ends. This is a Purple Line train to
With all 4 tracks open once again, Purple and Red Line trains are now completely separate from each other, with Purple Line trains on the outer tracks only stopping at Wilson Avenue, while Red Line trains make all intermediate stops on the inner tracks. Wilson Avenue Station has not seen any major work done since it was just rebuilt back in 2017. However, we can see that both island platforms are now back in service, with southbound trains using the platform to the west and northbound trains using the eastern platform. For the last 4 years, only one platform at a time has been open to accommodate the staging of the construction project. Very interestingly, this means that up until now, Wilson Station, designed to be a 4-track, 2-platform station, has actually operated for more of its life with only 2 tracks and 1 platform. The current station opened in October of 2017 and operated both platforms until May of 2021, when the eastern platform closed at the beginning of the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr Modernization Project. The station had only been open for just over 3.5 years at this time. In July of 2023, the east platform reopened, coinciding with the closure of the western platform, as the project progressed into Stage B. Now, in July of 2025, more than 4 years after 2-track operation began, the station is now finally reopened in its entirety. So it's very nice to see the still relatively new station back to operating how it was originally designed. Just a short ways up the line from Wilson is where we begin to see some new and exciting stuff. Our first stop is Lawrence Station, which has been closed since 2021 for reconstruction. The new Lawrence Station has 2 entrances, the main entrance on the north side of Lawrence Avenue, and an auxiliary exit located on the south side, right around where the old station entrance was. I have to say, my tour of the brand new stations started off here on a bit of a negative note with this exit. In much the same way that I did when I toured Damon Green Line Station last year, I found myself wondering why, in the day and age where we have the technology to build high barrier gates with fare card entrances, are our newest stations still being built with these kinds of exit-only roto gates? Of course, high barrier fare gates undoubtedly come with a slightly higher initial cost, since they require card reading equipment and a slightly more advanced locking system. But with the kind of budget needed to build these new stations, surely this can't have been that significant of an increase. And of course, there is slightly more maintenance required for these gates, but I have a hard time seeing it being that significant of a difference from the amount that it already takes to maintain the normal turnstiles at the main station entrance. As long as the entrance doesn't need to be staffed, it doesn't seem like the cost would be significantly more, and the operational difference this makes for passengers is significant. Now, I'll get to the numerous positive things I saw on my visit to Lawrence Station in just a moment, but I do have to spend just a little bit longer on this rant because this exit-only gate seems even more bizarre when one considers bus transfers as part of the equation. The station is served by the number 81 Lawrence bus, as I'll discuss in a bit. Because the station is nearer to the eastern end of the route, the vast majority of traffic will likely be from riders who boarded further west on Lawrence and are getting off of eastbound buses. However, this means that they will have to exit the bus in front of this exit-only gate and cross Lawrence Avenue at this crosswalk here. I thought if one side of the street had to be exit only, it should be on the side where more passengers are getting off the train and onto the bus. At least I thought this means it would be easy for passengers to come out through the main station house and get onto their westbound bus when they make their return trip. But then I realized that the westbound stop is all the way over here. It's not insanely far from the station, but it is a noticeable walk. So far so that they even had to have this sign directing passengers to the bus stop. So it turns out the only train or bus transfer that really works well at this station is for passengers who are getting off of the train and boarding an eastbound bus, which, for reference, will only make 2 more stops before reaching its eastern terminus and then turning around to come back again. My hope is that some or all of these measures may just be temporary since the station just opened and there may be some more minor improvements to come. At the moment, though, it all seems a bit poorly thought through. Now, before I get too negative, I will say that, on the whole, I really love the new Lawrence Station. The station houses are definitely an improvement over the previous Lawrence Station, which actually had no building at all. Quite the opposite. Walking in the main entrance, I was greeted by this sleek modern station house, which has lots of tile and stainless steel. The station house also features lots of LCD screens and houses turnstiles, a customer assistant, and ticket machines. Heading through the turnstiles, we are immediately greeted with the option to take either this escalator or this staircase up to the platform level, although there is also an elevator, which I'll try out in a moment. At the platform level, the station is equally impressive. The platform is wide and spacious and made out of concrete as opposed to the old wooden platforms that the station previously had. There's plenty more glass, concrete, and stainless steel up here as well. The platform features a slightly newer and more modern-looking version of the CTA's normal next train arrival screens, as well as these brand new information screens, which I really like, and I'm fairly certain don't exist anywhere else in the network at the moment, other than at these new stations. I very nearly didn't even go down to see the auxiliary exit to the south side of Lawrence Avenue. After all, I figured these exits are usually pretty primitive, a narrow staircase down and a gate at the bottom. But when I did go down, I was amazed to see how impressive this entrance actually was. There was not one but 2 staircases leading from the platform down to this landing area with tiling and artwork on the walls. From here, we can make a U-turn in either direction to another staircase, which leads down to a fairly spacious station house where the exit gate is located. Back in the main station house, we note just a few more options that passengers have to get to the platform level that we haven't covered yet. There's this main staircase which kind of winds through this passageway and makes its way up to the platform, and there is an elevator right here across from the escalator.
This is all new, escalators.
And before leaving Lawrence Station, let's take a moment to appreciate one of my favorite parts of the new elevated track structure: the awesome sounds that trains make as they depart. From Lawrence, we ride the Red Line up one stop to the new Argyle Station. Architecturally, all four of the new stations are quite similar, which makes sense for a project like this. It does mean that I'll spend a little less time at the other stations than I did at Lawrence. At Argyle Station, the platform is nearly identical to the one at Lawrence. Also nearly identical is the auxiliary exit to the south side of Argyle Street. The main station house at Argyle is very similar to the one at Lawrence, but sort of mirror image. The escalator and elevator are to the right as you enter here, and the elevator is straight ahead while the escalator is behind. And as one might expect, the elevator is very much the same as it was at Lawrence. All four elevators turned out to be quite similar and nondescript, but I definitely don't want to overlook the fact that all four of these stations do now have elevators, making all four of them step-free accessible, which none of them had been prior to or during the construction project. One thing I did find at Argyle, which I hadn't seen at Lawrence, was this screen, which showed both service alerts and upcoming arrivals for nearby bus routes, which was super helpful, but I found it interesting that it was here at Argyle, even though Argyle Street doesn't have a bus that runs along it. Still, it is helpful nonetheless for buses on the adjacent streets. What absolutely blew me away about Argyle was how much the street itself has been improved. The road and sidewalks had been redone with pavers, and brick crosswalks had been installed. With the new L structure being higher than the old one, and also not requiring a support pier in the middle of the road, the area in front of the station just feels much more open and inviting for pedestrians. It was very clear that a lot of effort had been put into the aesthetic design of this part of the station, and I love it. From here, I walked a couple blocks up to Berwyn Station. Along the way, I noted that the temporary Argyle Station, which had been located between Winona and Foster Streets, has been closed and the entrances have been boarded up and the signs covered. The temporary platform, now out of use, can be seen both from the new Argyle Station as well as from Berwyn Station. Berwyn definitely felt like the smallest and simplest of the four stations. The main station house is on the south side of Berwyn Avenue, kind of tucked into a corner here. However, it wasn't spared the architectural flourishes, with this neat canopy for the station front lighting and the support column all adding to the aesthetic. The interior of the station house perhaps felt slightly more cramped than the others, but still had all the same amenities from the ticket machines to the LCD screens to the elevator to the escalator. And there's still plenty of neat artwork at the station as well. There's not much new to note on the platform level that we haven't already seen at Lawrence and Argyle stations. But from here we can catch a good view of the point where this already very impressive looking 4-track line widens out to a total of 5 tracks, with the middle track being present around Winona Street. This middle track is actually being used in revenue service at the moment, as northbound Red Line trains are diverted onto it in order to get around the temporary Argyle Station platform, which was used during construction and is currently situated in the middle of Track 3. It will presumably take a little bit of time for the CTA and their contractors to dismantle this temporary platform, place in the missing section of Track 3, and then shift service over. Once this is done, the middle track will be able to be used for storage of trains as needed. Berwyn does also have an auxiliary exit on the north side of Berwyn Avenue, which feels just a bit like someone took one of the auxiliary exits from Lawrence or Argyle and just chopped it in half, keeping with the theme of Berwyn feeling just a little smaller and simpler. It's still a great looking exit though, complete with this artwork on the wall. I'm also a little bit more okay with this one being an exit only gate, considering that all the bus connections on Berwyn Avenue are going to be on the south side of the street, where the main station house is. Although having a fare gate that passengers can enter through on the north side of the street does seem like a small convenience that would be pretty helpful. One more stop along the Red Line, and we arrive at the final new station in the set, Mawr Station.
This is
Mawr Station, for some reason, just felt a little bit simpler than the other 3 at platform level, but definitely had the most going on at street level in terms of entrances and exits. At the extreme south end of the platform is an auxiliary entrance which leads to the south side of Mawr Avenue. This one, notably, has high barrier gates allowing passengers to both enter and exit the station here. On the north end of the station, there's another exit onto the south side of Hollywood Avenue. Very interestingly, this entrance is staffed by a customer assistant, but it has just 2 high barrier gates and 1 handicap accessible fare gate. I find it a bit strange that even though the entrance is staffed, they're still using high barrier gates, which I find significantly less convenient than traditional turnstiles. But the important thing is that people can enter the station here, including those with bulky items or those who need step-free access, since there is an elevator at this entrance as well. Of course, there's also the main station house on the north side of Mawr Avenue, which houses another customer assistant, another accessible gate, conventional turnstiles, ticket machines, an escalator, and another elevator to the platform. Overall, the station at Bryn Mawr exhibits a lot of the same features as the other 3 stations we've already seen, although I do have to take a moment to admire the impressive aesthetic of the station fronts along Bryn Mawr Avenue. I just love the way that the new, higher elevated structure just creates so much more space in front of the stations and just adds to the appearance of the whole place. This station front also looks really quite impressive with the glass front, art, and tiles, as well as the concrete support structure for the L, which even matches to some extent with these pilasters original to the 1923 station house. Now that we've seen all the stations, we should take a few minutes to note several buses that were rerouted during the project, which are now able to resume their original routings. Bus number 81, the Lawrence Avenue bus, was rerouted back in May of 2021 to connect with Wilson Station. Buses have resumed their original routing, continuing straight east on Lawrence all the way to Marine Drive. Buses no longer run on Broadway, Wilson, or Ashland, and no longer connect to Wilson Station. Wilson will continue to be served directly by the number 78 Montrose bus, and will also be served by the number 36 Broadway bus, which is just a short walk away. In the meantime, as I alluded to earlier, the CTA has reinstated stops on the number 81 in both directions outside of Lawrence Station. The number 92 Foster Avenue bus and the number 146 Inner Lakeshore Drive Michigan Express have been operating along their normal routes since work progressed to Stage B 2 years ago. However, these routes have since been making connections to the Red Line at the temporary Argyle Station along Foster Avenue. With the closure of this temporary station coinciding with the reopening of Berwyn Station, the Red Line connection is now on Berwyn Avenue. This also serves as the layover point for both routes, being the eastern terminus of the number 92 and the northern terminus of the number 146. The number 84 Peterson Avenue bus was rerouted in 2023 to serve Thorndale Station. It has now resumed its regular routing along Bryn Avenue. From the Red Line station on Bryn it continues east all the way to DuSable Lakeshore Drive before turning around and heading west on Bryn again. These buses will no longer run on Sheridan, Thorndale, or Hollywood, nor will they serve the Thorndale Red Line station. Thorndale will no longer have a direct bus connection, but it will continue to be just over a 1-minute walk from the number 36 Broadway bus, and a walk of a little over 3 minutes from routes 136, 147, and 151, which all stop on Sheridan Road at Thorndale Avenue. Passengers wishing to connect between the number 84 Peterson bus and the Red Line can now make all these connections at the Bryn station, since, with the new permanent station opened here, it is now able to accommodate Red Line trains in both directions. It is worth noting that there is still an unrelated reroute in effect on the number 84, which sees eastbound buses operating via Clark, Ashland, Foster, and Broadway in order to reach Bryn Avenue, and westbound buses are running via Broadway, Devon, and Clark on their return to Ridge Avenue. This is due to construction currently underway on the southeasternmost stretch of Ridge Avenue. CDOT has estimated that this project could conclude as soon as within the next week or two, but of course this is just an estimate. And in the meantime, buses will continue to observe this reroute along Broadway and immediately to the west of it, and service to the east of Broadway will resume its original pattern, which I have just described. So, there we go. The red and purple lines are back to normal operations, with all 4 tracks back to regular service. I think it's great to see the high-quality transit facility that this quad-track main line is back in regular service and even running better than it has in the past, including the nice new accessible stations, which will hopefully be very useful to the residents in the Uptown and Edgewater areas. With Phase 1 of the Red-Purple Modernization completed, naturally we're looking towards what will come next. The CTA is gearing up very soon to begin work on an extension of the Red Line, south from 95th Street down to 130th Street on the far south side. This extension is set to open in 2029. The following year, 2030, has been slated for work to begin on the north end of the line with the next phase of the Red-Purple Modernization. Of course, the future of this project is now very much up in the air, as the RTA continues to battle with the state of Illinois for the funding needed to close a major deficit in the budget for transit in Chicagoland. Based on the challenges seen so far with obtaining this funding, we could see future phases of this project delayed or even eliminated. But all of this remains to be seen. Time will tell what is coming for the Red Line, but for now, we have the new tracks and station facilities to enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.